All right, welcome to the Tuesday, October 15th meeting of the Finance Committee of the Common Council to discuss the proposed fiscal year 25 budget. On today's agenda, we are going to go over the Law Department as well as the Department of Neighborhood and Community Services presentations. That includes Community Services, Planning and Development, as well as Buildings and Regulatory Compliance. We're also going to discuss Resolution 107, 101, 24R related to a budget funds transfer to affect a salary rate or salary total. With that being said, committee members present are Councilmember Keegan, Councilmember Farrell, and myself, Councilwoman Frederick. And we are also joined by our staff, our Legislative Director, Brian Jimenez, our newest addition, Alyssa Camera, our City Clerk, Shaniqua Jackson. And we're also joined by our Deputy City Clerk, Demetra Brown. Okay. With that being said, I would like to leave the resolution for last, just to go through with you, Gideon. So let's start with the Law Department. That's good? Thank you. We are joined by Corporation Counsel, Marissa Franchini. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. All right, we'll get going here. I have a couple slides for you about my department and our budget proposal for this upcoming year. So this is just a general statement about the department's mission. We are the chief legal advisor for the city. The departments and all the officers. In addition to rendering legal advice, the department represents the city in all civil actions and proceedings brought by against the city, its officers, and employees. We also prepare all contracts, licenses, leases, permits, deeds, easements. We also prosecute violations of traffic, parking, code enforcement, and other quality of life issues such as general city code ordinance violations. So we have a very wide jurisdiction and a broad mandate, which covers basically every type of law you could think of. Some of our core functions are listed here. We defend the city in all civil actions, including tax certiorari claims, torts such as your trip and falls, all your civil rights actions, your 1983 type civil rights claims, prosecution of all the types of violations listed here. We represent every department and every board in the city, and we are present during all those meetings. We negotiate collective bargaining agreements with all of the 13 collective bargaining agreements across the city departments. All but 2 of those are settled rate. We will also work with each department on disciplinary issues, implementing progressive discipline pursuant to their own CBAs or pursuant to the city's policies and procedures. And then the last bulletin is just about the contracts, RFPs, and bid specs that we review and draft and get shepherd through the process of procurement. So far this year, we're having a great year. We've been able to maintain almost all of our staff. I think we've only had 1 new attorney this entire year so far. And that is our planning and zoning attorney, which took a little bit of time to fill, but he's been great. He's been with us for a couple months, so we are completely 100% staffed as of right now. We had an empty admin position, which we filled basically because code enforcement is very busy. Something new this year, my second bullet point here, that the law department started doing are the ERPO hearings, commonly known as red flag law proceedings. This was a law passed by the state, I believe in 2020, and this is an action filed by a police officer in a circumstance where an individual is perceived to be a threat or danger to themselves or others, and their weapons and firearms are taken from them. They are then have a right to a hearing in Supreme Court within 24 hours of that action being filed. So they're pretty interesting hearings. We've had about a dozen of them so far, 10. And we meet with the police officers involved and rush over to Supreme Court and have a full-on evidentiary hearing in front of a Supreme Court judge. So it's something new that we had to learn about. And it's been great so far. We've been able to remove weapons and firearms from people who have been at a risk to the public, including the Temple Israel shooter. If you remember, when that happened earlier in the year, an ERPO action was filed against him, and we were able to remove his guns, and we actually had, he had a federal public defender, so we had a bit of motion practice in that action. So that was an interesting case. So that's something new that we've been doing with success. We've also represented the City of Albany at several different conferences, including the 2 listed here. So that's been exciting. We obviously provide legal support to all the city departments. We continue our summer intern program, which has been great, very much focused on diversity and kind of increasing the knowledge about municipal law in general for law students. It is a paid program, and we've had interns, actually one that returned for a second summer with us, and then another new one this year. So it's been great to have those interns, and we also have had some during the semesters as well. We continue to focus on code violations. This year so far, we've collected about $225,000 in code violation fees, which is a new record. We have some more detail on that on a later slide. Zombie property lawsuits. We've spoken about these in the past, so we're continuing to proactively. I think this is only the 3rd year we've been filing these types of lawsuits. Basically, when a bank is holding a property and they're not doing anything with it, and they're allowing that property to become a nuisance or to have code violations, what we can do is proactively file a lawsuit against that bank. Turns out, when you sue a bank, they tend to give you some money. So we have been successful in a lot of these actions. We have with settlements that involve both fixing the property, that's our number 1 priority, is fixing the property. Our number 2 priority is getting that property back into the hands of a homeowner, back on the tax rolls, made available to people who need housing. We've been very successful in both those things, and then kind of a side bonus is the penalties that are collected as a result of those actions. Now, when we first started doing these, it was with a grant from the Attorney General. That grant has expired, so we do try to keep that position self-funded, just because it was a new position when we got that grant. So we've been successful in self-funding that position. Total penalties projected over the course of the program are coming up upon $500,000. We've settled 13 cases. 9 of those associated properties have been turned over to new owners, which is the most important goal. We're very happy with that. An additional 7 cases will be filed shortly. There's quite a bit of a process leading up to filing of cases. You have to go back to the property several times and cite and document. So there's 7 cases in the pipeline right now. After that, we'll be left with only 21 properties on the DFS, Department of Financial Services zombie property list. So we have worried that we'll get to the bottom of that list, but there happens to be just more that keep coming on the front end. So we're not worried about running out of zombie properties. This is just a little bit of statistics about our code enforcement. It is an incredibly busy operation. We have court 4 days a month for codes. Each time there's over 100 cases on the court calendar. We have over 1,000 cases currently in prosecution. So it's a huge caseload, primarily handled by Madeline Thomasis on my team, but we have pretty much a 3-person codes team plus an admin right now. We have Madeline, Chris, and then we have Rob, and we have a paralegal who helps shepherd those cases through. About 100 cases every month are referred from the Buildings and Regulatory Compliance, the code officers. 80 cases, then we file them for prosecution, which is about 80 cases a month. You can see from the charts and graphs here that we had a little bit of a surge post-COVID. It went down a little bit in 2021 and then back up in 2022 and 23. We seem to be coming down a little bit, but these numbers aren't final for 2024, so we'll see where they end up compared to those other years. So this is my budget proposal for next year. There's nothing really new. I'm not asking for any new positions or any new money. So, right? Yep. So nothing too exciting on this slide. Okay. And then 2025 goals are just to continue pretty much doing what we're doing, maintaining staffing levels. We have several attorneys now who have been here for 4 years, which is great. You know, we couldn't say that for a long time. People were leaving after 1-2 years, so I feel pretty good about maintaining really good people. We have a great team. Keep having our legal intern program. Keep effectively providing legal services to every branch of city government. Keep using strategic collections to focus on repeat code violation of offenders. And then proactively educate and train city departments on best practices to mitigate liabilities and compliance. So we've tried to be proactive about getting out there and training on things like FOIL, open meetings law, you know, prevention of accidents. We've had driver's ed trainings for departments, so that is something we try to do, and we're going to try to do more of it in the future. Okay, so now I'll take any questions.
Thank you. All right, so just to recognize who's joined us, we are also joined by committee members, Councilmember Ballerin and Councilmember Adams. With that, we'll go into questions from the committee. So I see a hand up from Councilmember Keegan.
Thank you so much for meeting with us after hours so we can process through budget. I always appreciate when staff are willing to stay late to meet with the council. I'm hoping my questions are relatively brief, but I just have a few. We're not adding staffing positions, but our salary totals are expected to go up. Is that a result of planned raises for staff this year? Just want to make sure I understand that budget increase.
The raises are, I think, just the typical like 2 or 3%.
I just want to make sure that that's why we're seeing the change.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And then there's a $20,000 increase anticipated for contracted services. Do we know why? Because it looks like it's gone back to roughly where we were in 2023. Do we know what that is from?
I'm not sure. We did have a decrease in our contracted services line because of some decrease in outside counsel contracts, and those aren't going to be changing next year. So actually, you know what? I think there are, in our outside counsel contracts, there are yearly increases built into the contracts.
Okay.
So
I just want to make sure I understood. It's not a lot of money. I just wanted to make sure I understood that number. And then my last questions are sort of process questions. So you're doing the ERPO hearings. How is the department managing coverage for that? Because I would anticipate that you have attorneys that have to be on call on the weekends to be able to manage that 24-hour time frame.
Yes. We haven't had any on the weekends so far. I think APD maybe waits to file them until the next business day, because you can't file with the court on a weekend anyway. So it's a complaint form that they fill out and file with the court. So I don't think they're filed on the weekends. So we haven't had that problem. We have 3 attorneys trained up on how to do them, myself, Chris, and Matt. And so far we've been able to cover them.
So they did receive specialized training to be able to manage?
Not really. We'd internally, the Attorney General's office has a whole unit that does these, and we've been in touch with them, and we've received some training materials from them, and some guidance materials, so we kind of trained ourselves. The Attorney General's office does do these hearings for pretty much every other municipality in the state, but they declined to do ours, so they have helped us and answered questions along the way, but we took that on ourselves.
Are the attorneys able to take CLEs for this?
I haven't found any, but they would be.
Okay. I would just imagine it would make sense that we would try to work that in through CLEs, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's not a whole lot of people that do them except for the Attorney General's office.
Okay. And then I want to talk a little bit about codes. I know one of the first things that I was working on with the codes department itself in sort of reading their quarterly reports, there was the log jam with the courts, and then the Office for Court Administration provided us with substantially more court time. Do we feel that we have adequate staffing now to manage all of the court time? I know you added, I think, 1.5 attorneys. That
We had one extra attorney that was grant funded. So, yeah, we have sufficient staffing and
Okay.
backup staffing in place as of now, and we have a great new admin as well. So we feel pretty good about our staffing levels. The court time has increased, and that it's changed a little bit. We used to have all of Tuesdays, now we have all of Thursdays and Fridays, but that's been a huge improvement. We used to just have Thursdays, so we have double the court time, and it's been working really well.
So that's like an incredibly important piece to being able to do code enforcement in the city, is the actual ability to prosecute. Because if it takes 6 months to a year for us to get to court, why would somebody ever bother to respond to a violation or citation from our codes department?
Absolutely.
And then my last question, I believe we had done some expungement clinics for the city. Are we still doing those?
We didn't do it this year because the state passed what is pretty much an automatic expungement. So there's really no need for people to have their records sealed anymore. They should be automatically expunged.
Okay, I didn't see any information in there, and I think it's an incredibly important service for our community, especially for our former offenders who have turned themselves around and are
Yes.
doing what they need to be doing in the community to be able to access expungement. So I wanted to make sure we weren't dropping the ball in that arena.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. We loved doing them. We really liked being in touch with people, and helping people on that one-on-one basis was great, and great for my staff to learn how to do it. But now that it's automatic, we have had people call and ask about it, and we said, you should call the court of your original conviction to make sure it was expunged, but it is now automatic.
Okay,
Yeah.
those are all the questions that I had. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
We are also joined by Councilmember Anane and our Budget Deputy Director, Catherine Fitzpatrick. Our Budget Director could not join us this evening. Additional questions from committee members? Okay, just one question for me, just to go back to the court time. So, good to hear that you've expanded to Thursdays and Fridays. Do you still find that even with that expanded time, you have backlog? And if you could speak to how long it takes to get a case in court, that would be great.
Sure. I would say now it's probably about a 2-month time frame. It's been working pretty well, and that time there are several appearances in the meantime. So sometimes we can't go right to court, right, because they have all these compliance dates. They come in and check in with the court again. So there is some time in the process that is just built in, and that's going to take some time. But we feel pretty good about the time frame.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right, Councilmember Ballerin.
You got good eyes. Thank you. Thank you, Shirley. I've got just more of a comment, less than a question. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the work you do. And thank you for getting us to a better position than we've been in the past by addressing a lot of our union contracts and getting them closed up. But we were made aware of a couple that are still unsettled, specifically with the APD, with the non-uniform staff, as well as with the telecommunication staff. So if there's anything you can do, I know your department plays a strong hand in those negotiations to get those moving and get those settled. As you know, retention and morale is low, and they've been specifically telecommunications are down, 15 staff, which is a significant number when they're only budgeted for, I think 31 or 34, or 39, I think is the number. I don't have it in front of me. But to be down 15 is a significant number for that group. So anything you can do and your office can do to get those, to the finish line, I think, I speak for myself, but I would support getting the funding that's needed to get them close, but also to be able to improve morale with those departments and hopefully also improve retention. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. We firmly, do everything we can to get contracts settled and to keep these groups of employees, fairly paid, well paid, and fair contract provisions. So I agree with you. I want nothing more than to have them all settled. I can't speak to the specifics of what happens in the negotiating table and what issues they're facing, but I will tell you that we're working every day to get to consensus on those.
Have any additional questions or comments for law? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Franchini, for joining us this evening and walking us through your budget.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have our largest department, Neighborhood and Community Services. So, Faye, I will defer to you on how you want to have people present this, but if people need to come up, feel free to, bring chairs up, or you can even sit at council members' desk and use the mics there as well.
Switch this to ours. Do you know how I switch this over to our presentation?
Alyssa, can you, just 1 minute, we'll get that over.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Are we all set? Right? Okay.
Okay, yes, thank you, Commissioner Andrews, for joining us this evening. I would love to recognize everyone. We have a large crew here, so I'm just going to say thank you for all joining us. Whenever you get to your presentation point, if you can introduce yourself. I see Brad, Sarah, we have Rick here, Nick, so please, everyone, just go through, give your name and title as well, but with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. So I'm Faye Andrews, Commissioner for Neighborhood and Community Services. We've had a really pretty busy year. We're going to try to go through these slides quicker than as quickly as possible. So we're going to highlight some of the things that everyone's been working on. And if you have questions about any of them afterwards, we're happy to answer those. So let's see. Okay. So I'm going to hand it over now to Sarah to talk quick about the neighborhood services.
Hello, I'm Sarah Camp, the Director of Neighborhood Services. As you all know, this was our almost complete second year of a department. We've been very busy, as Faye mentioned. Our specialists have been out in the community cultivating and being able to maintain trusted relationships with community-based organizations and residents, and also been able to keep an open line of communication on things related to the city and beyond that as well. I'm sure many of you have seen them out and about, neighborhood association meetings, community events, farmers markets, cleanups, just maintaining that resource information to everybody that needs it. We've also, about 6 months or so, we've had an e-newsletter that's gaining readership and followership that's been pretty successful. And this year, in our second year, we've made it a point to work pretty closely with some of the other departments that have outward-facing community events and collaborating with APD, for example, on their pop-up barbecues, and Department of General Services at the drop-it and swap-it events. And I would say that they were all a success and that we would continue to be partners in those and more community outreach events. We also have our second year of a trunk or treat event that we've kind of reversed the roles and been the host there, and looking to potentially add some future events down the road. We also have our in-house front office staff that works the customer service desk at 200 Henry Johnson, and they continue to be extremely busy, seeing 50 to 60 walk-ins and upwards of 150 calls a day. Luckily, we're fully staffed, and they have also all been completely trained and receiving and processing general building permits for codes. Next. Oh, okay. And the goals, yeah. So moving forward this year, our two biggest, in addition to continuing all those efforts, would be establishing a multi-department protocol so that other departments are aware of where neighborhood services fits in as far as community outreach for construction and things like that. We're working pretty closely with the engineering department and planning and a few others. And then also, I would say bulking up our pretty substantial list of resources and assets and adding amenities by neighborhood in hopes that that will help us kind of shape the future of what both our department are seeing as needs in various communities, as well as what community members are seeing when we speak with them out in the public. Thank you.
I'm Brad Glass. I'm the Director of Planning and Development. 2024 accomplishments. I think one of the biggest accomplishments, we've been able to close out 3 capital projects that really vexed us for some time. The Phase 2 of the South End Connector, the underpass lighting for the DRI going into the warehouse district under the Broadway Livingston Bridge there, and the West Hill Lucid project, reinvigorating a formerly underutilized alley space there. We've also worked to finalize 2 brownfield opportunity area plans and a local waterfront revitalization plan update from a current plan that dates to 1991. We were able to survey the Delaware Avenue neighborhood for potential listing on the National Register of Historic Places, and we were able to, following up on our survey of the prior year, list the warehouse district as well. So that'll make owners in those areas eligible for historic tax credits at the state and federal level. You know, again, working with the council to prepare legislative changes to our USDO, that's something we've set aside more time to do, to really treat that as a living document. And to also, we have a permitting software we're looking at that will allow people to submit their applications online and better be able to track those. And that's to underscore the over $200 million in private development projects that our staff reviews on an annual basis. In 2025, we really need to begin laying the groundwork and assessing grants for our Albany 2030 comprehensive plan. 2030 is right around the corner, so looking for some funds that allow us to think about updating that. As well as a couple capital projects. We have some money from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to do a selected project in the Tivoli Preserve. It's $1.25 million, and we currently have a design contract to assess 3 different feasibility options. We're also going to be surveying the Pine Hills District this year for National Register listing, And we have a Hudson River Gateways project that looks at accessing and facilitating connections to the water department. We've been able to work collaboratively with DGS and sustainability and some of the other city projects to sort of have everybody bring some funds to the table that'll allow us to get that project done. The grant is a relatively small amount, but through finding some synergy with the DGS and some of the other departments that are already looking at work in that area, we can kind of team up and get that done as well.
So with housing, I'm Michael Foley. I'm the director of Albany State Development. I also have Kristen Cronin, who is our federal housing finance manager. Some of our accomplishments this year, we've assisted 124 households with our in-house programs. Over 4,800 people have been benefit from our public services, and we also made 51 units lead safe in the city of Albany. Our biggest highlight this year is going to be that we applied for and received $5 million in a lead grant, another $1.9 million in Healthy Homes grant, and $600,000 for homeowner rehabs. We included some charts in here so you guys can see, where we're spending our money and who's receiving the money. So it's just to give you guys some information of where our funding's coming from and who our public services, just kind of a breakdown of overall of our program. So please take a look at those charts so you can see where our funding is going. We're just looking to, as far as our goals go, we're just going to look to keep securing more funds so we can keep on serving the public. And we're going to be working on our 5-year consolidated plan.
Good evening. Rick LaJoy, Director of Buildings and Regulatory Compliance, and I'm accompanied with my Deputy Director, Valerie Scott. So just to hit on a couple of the highlights, we have a pretty busy department. We've continued to grow our community outreach, our community code sweeps, where we meet with other departments, and we do code sweeps of specific areas with other council members, with neighborhood organizations, and other stakeholders that may identify issues in their neighborhood and would like us to do a quality of life walkthrough. We've further expanded our citizens access portal, which allows the community to do things more online with our department and less having face to face. And we'll talk about that as we grow into 2025. We've increased our customer service training. That's an ongoing, that's pretty much building wide. We're constantly doing what we can to, be better equipped to, deal with, high stress situations and residents and, different events that we have to, may come out on, out in the field. And another highlight is a group that I started just about 2 years ago with other of our local municipalities. It started with 4 other municipalities where I would meet bi-monthly with my counterparts, and we would discuss best policies and procedures, knowing that we're all dealing with the same quality of life issues, better ways to be proactive and efficient with those. It's now grown to 8 other municipalities and continues to grow every other month as we do this, and I'll be expanding that statewide through our building officials conference moving into 2025. We'll have a component of Zoom meetings or a team where other municipalities can join in. We found it very beneficial. It's been a really great. It's been really great. I've never left a meeting without coming back and talking with Val and our management staff and figuring out better ways to do things we're currently doing, or expand the things we're doing, or stop doing something that we may be doing. We have a lot of great folks involved in that group. Oh, my bad. And I also want to just to expand or explain or verbalize a little better how busy our department is. We've issued, as of September 30th, we've issued 3,000 building permits this year, 7,000 ROP permits, We've cited 734 owners for not complying with the ROP. And just our general inspections, our building inspectors have conducted up through the end of September 6,000 building inspections, and our code enforcement side of the office have done just about 10,000 code inspections this year. Our goals moving forward, really, we're just going to continue to grow and tweak the things that we've been doing. We want to finish our rollout of our Citizens Access Portal, which will allow folks to be able to register and pay for different registries at this point. And moving forward, that'll move into building permits and that kind of thing, where the online component will, again, just make things a lot easier for our residents who can't get here during the business day, or maybe email isn't the best way for them to communicate. So this will hopefully help the residents, but also help our department in the efficiency. And like I said, we're just going to continue to expand our proactive inspections and continue to work on better ways to deal with the quality of life issues that face our city.
Okay, so I'll go over our budget quick. I think, going into our third year, this is probably our more realistic budget for us, considering we were trying to figure out how to, consolidate some of the expenditures for all 4 departments in the building. So our, our personnel services, our head count is still 74. And like with the law department, the increase in personnel services in terms of cost is due to the different increases that have been put in place this year. I think that, the other thing, the revenues have gone up a little bit thanks to the grants that ACDA applied for and received this year, and the same with our expenditures. That'll be related to what their contracts are for this. The Lincoln Tower, do you want to speak to the Lincoln Tower one? Sorry, that's the only, I think that's a spot for the,
So for the Lincoln Towers, we were successful in winning a federal appropriation in the FY23 federal budget cycle. So this is a pass-through. We are in contract with the Albany Housing Authority, and they will be spending those funds on behalf of the city to do the abatement and sort of asbestos removal, that kind of pre-work to taking down the towers. And we have another appropriation request currently with the federal government. So it's been passed through the first phase, so hopefully we'll be getting another $3 million when the feds are ready to pass a budget to continue furthering that work. But we had to put it somewhere, and we put it in housing, but we're working with Housing Authority on that project, and if you have questions, they can come in and sort of speak to progress on that.
All right, so now we're happy to answer any questions you all have.
Okay. Thank you all. And for the record, when I said largest department, obviously largest presentation.
Sorry.
Well aware we have larger departments. So with that, I'm going to start to see if we have any questions over here, just to switch it up a little bit. So let's go to Councilmember Adams first.
Thank you. Good evening. Appreciate you for your presentations this evening. A few basic quick questions for the community service revenue line. Just trying to get clarification as to the cannabis tax and the budgeted line for $500,000, and just trying to get clarification as to what we've been seeing so far and how we adjusted for that number from the previous year.
Hi, so I've noticed I'm not Gideon. I'm Deputy Director, so nice to meet you all formally. So Kate Fitzpatrick. So our cannabis tax number, that's based on the actuals that we received quarterly over this past year. It has been increasing quarter over quarter, but we haven't received any specific information as to what to expect in the following year. So those are based on estimates from this past year. So like the actuals from this past year.
And also to clarify, the revenue that's being generated by this is being used or going towards what again?
That is going to support programs in the housing.
Great. Okay. possible.
Additional questions? Councilmember Farrell and then Councilmember Keegan.
Okay, thank you so much for all the work that everyone does and just putting this whole department together. I feel like last year it was a glowing success and it just continues to be so. So thank you all so much for all the work that you do. With so many different departments kind of wrapped into one, there's definitely a lot of opportunities for different questions. One of the things, so I have a question in, like, on the line item for housing. And Mick, I have to be honest, I don't totally understand what your entire department does. I just know it's very important. I didn't understand it when Faye was there either. I was just pleased that it was done. I knew that it was done well, and we appreciate you. And this might be something that budget needs to answer, but in the contracted services, line 7440, that budget line has gone up a dramatic amount, and I was just curious if
That's due to the new grant that we received from the California State, so, you know, it's $1.9 million healthy homes and that's $600,000 in state funding for single-family rehab. So that's why that number is so much.
excellent. That is a wonderful thing. Thank you. And I would probably ask more if I had a better grasp, and I apologize that I do not, but I'd just say that we really appreciate the work that you guys do. With codes, I'm curious about how your staffing levels are, how you're feeling like your staffing levels are.
So we currently have one code inspector position open, but once we fill that, we'll be full. And I think we have, I mean, the reality is there's enough work out there if we wanted to have more manpower, but the backside of that would be we would then be overwhelming the court system again. So it really doesn't make much sense in looking to add folks at this time. But I think once we fill this code inspector position and we're back up to capacity, we have plenty of folks to cover all the work that we need to do.
That's great to hear, and also excellent work on your end, because I know that that was not the case as you've presented over the years. It's great to hear that the staffing has improved. And for codes, I often feel like codes is kind of our first line of defense. I know it is in my ward, and it's something that I just very much appreciate the work that code inspectors do, and I know that it's not an easy job to do. Recently there was a code inspector's email put out, and so there's it's not necessarily pleasant to deal with all the important things, but it's also incredibly important for us because I know for me that's something where we find out sometimes there's a need there, that it's like a code, you report a code infraction and there's not necessarily an infraction that's put in, it's something like there's a need, somebody needs something that needs help. Sometimes it is the way to really crack down on some absentee landlords, to start like pushing on codes and looking at things. None of that is easy. So I know that there is no way to say like they should all get a raise. I'm sure we all want to give every employee raises, but I'm continually concerned about code inspectors and that we're paying them enough, because it is a job that it's not an easy job, and you're getting just a lot of hate from it. So I'm always very open to pushing for that, and I'm just putting that out there because I do think it's an important thing to have. So I don't expect you to answer that, though, because that's an awkward
We appreciate
position.
the support. That support makes the job a lot easier when we are dealing with those kinds of situations. So we appreciate the council and the administration's support.
And then for planning, We very much appreciate all of your work too. Were it not for planning, we wouldn't have all the beautiful things that we do have. And I know that this is something that traffic engineering has really moved to engineering, which it's got engineering in the name, it makes perfect sense, and I don't necessarily expect you to be able to speak to that at all, but a big part of planning for us is traffic pattern and bike and pedestrian access, and it just feels like it's a continual, like it doesn't always mesh together. So I'm just putting it out there that should there be a situation where we could have someone in planning that actually could be part of like a more wholesome planning for traffic, including bike and pedestrian, and really finding good places for bike and pedestrian, I would love that, because I do think that that is something that's lacking in our city. So there's that, but I'm also curious about how your staffing levels are, because I know that what we were paying our planners in the past has been an issue for retention of planners and that kind of thing. So I wanted to check in on that.
No, everyone's been great as far as salaries are concerned. You did ask in a couple of years past if we needed more people, and this year my answer is yes. We did put a position in for a permit technician that's going to reside physically on the first floor in our building and can deal with a lot of the walk-in traffic, a lot of the requests for zoning compliance, and a lot of the requests for general permitting, kind of walking people through those steps. And that's kind of the feedback I've got from some of our entry-level planners, is that they're constantly kind of being interrupted, or they don't feel that that's something that, you know, that they went to school for or something. So something I think at a at a permit tech level that has can work off of an SOP and answer and deal with some basic day-to-day inquiries, I think will help us a lot. So that is something we added in the budget this year. And as far as transportation planning, I mean, we're happy to be at the table. I think we're at staffing levels now where we can confidently do that. But I do think, engineering has got a good team, and I think that they have a consultant that they're going to be working with too. So I think they're bringing more resources to the table. It just kind of takes time to get all those things together. So.
Yeah, and I think with the different departments, it will probably it might not be necessary. It might be with where everything is, it all comes together. But it's definitely been something I felt has been lacking. And not just necessarily in terms of the design, but also in the actual communicating to people, because a lot of people, they want traffic to slow down, but they don't want the infrastructure to change, and that doesn't happen. And so even having somebody that can really articulate that to people so that they understand that better would make at least my own life easier as part of the planning process. And I think it probably would make engineering's life easier and your life easier, because there's a lot of traffic I find is something that people just think there's a magic wand that it, like, if you flip the traffic switch, people suddenly slow down, and that's not the case. At least I haven't found it, and maybe some municipality has it, but I don't think we do in Albany. So, and I'm thrilled to hear that you guys are fully staffed and added the position. That's great. I think those are my questions right now. I might have more, but I'll turn it over to other people.
Councilmember Keegan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, thank you all for staying way past the end of your workday. And I know many people in your departments are working evenings, weekends. I see them out all the time, and we definitely appreciate all the work that they do. I have a couple of questions for you. I'm assuming that the slight drop in your total salary plan was due to reductions in staffing in certain places. That's line 7,000 on page 77.
Yes, there's one position that is moving out of that neighborhood unit. The communications coordinator has moved into HR, and that was a title that was formerly in HR, but then started doing some work with neighborhood services prior to them getting staffed up with the neighborhood services unit, back when they were just ACDA planning and code. So that's moved over to admin.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. And then this is, I think, a fake question, could be wrong. I see that we're not budgeting for any revenue from the Love Your Block grant. Is that because that grant has ended, or?
Yes,
Okay.
it has. The grant has ended, but it's been built into this, into our budget so that we can continue.
So we're still going to be providing the same types of services.
Yep.
That program's not ending, we're just not going to get any revenue funding for that. Is that
Correct.
because they stopped allowing us to apply for that funding, or is it because we just didn't receive a renewal?
So that was just a one-time grant for the program. A lot of communities, once the grant funds are used up, they don't run the program any longer. But I think we can all agree that it's been a really great program throughout the city, and we'd like to continue it. So, and actually, Erin, last year, the person who runs the program was already on the city budget for this program year. But next year we will have the whole thing fully funded through the city.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I think
You asked a lot of questions, Jenny, so.
My other question, we're seeing a significant, under the Department of Housing and Community Development, where we had the increase, we had an overall increase in staffing, so there's an increase in projected budget. There also seems to be a significant increase in employee benefit expenditures. Is that related to that total change? I'm referring to line, department totals under line 7861. Went up by about 600,000.
Yeah, the benefits, those are tied directly to salaries, yes.
And then, Faye, I think this is also a question for you. It's not a question for you, sorry. It's actually a question for Rick and or maybe Corp Counsel. We're anticipating a pretty substantial increase in revenue from codes in a bunch of different categories. So like one is codes violation court. I'm assuming that is predictive increase in prosecutions with increased court time. And then increased revenue in the rental registry. Is there something driving?
Just our internal process of finding the ones that are not currently in compliance and having the success in getting them to comply. So
And-
just watching that trend, that's where.
And
Yeah,
then
and I think the last year's budget was a little conservative, so Gideon and the budget office looked at the actuals that were coming
Okay.
in and kind of adjusted upwards.
and there's another big jump for stabilization and demolition fees. Are we anticipating a significant increase in, because I know that sort of washes out, right? Like,
Correct, yep. Whatever it's spent, it comes back. So it's based on just what those demolitions have, what they routinely cost.
and again, I just want to make sure I understand the numbers.
So if you looked at a multiple year kind of average, it kind of varies year to year, so I think this was based on 3 or 4 years and just kind of setting it there, and then we'll see
Okay.
what happens.
And then I just have some general questions, and this one sort of is both a planning and buildings and codes. Have we seen a significant change in proposed development projects coming through planning and or a drop in requests? I mean, it looks like we had an increase in requests for permits related to both commercial and residential development.
Yeah, ours continues to grow, and I think we saw maybe a smaller amount for the commercial, but an increase in the residential. So, I mean, Brad would be able to speak more about things that might be coming down the line, but, ours are just projects that have already been approved, you know, and a lot of the smaller commits residential.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's been pretty consistent. You know, the types of projects we've seen have changed a little bit. We've been seeing more rehab than new construction, and probably more on the commercial side than the residential side, although we've had a number of affordable housing tax credit projects that have sort of been like a scatter site development. So those are, you know, filling a lot of missing teeth, so to speak. So I think overall the number's about the same, if not a little bit higher, because of the scattered site projects.
And I was hoping you guys could talk a little bit more about the asset and amenity tracking system and how that's being utilized and deployed, and what kind of coordination we're having with other departments that may need to address the lack of assets or amenities, because you may have a tracking system, but it's really recreation and DGS that are sort of filling in the gaps in terms of the city providing assets and amenities, if that makes any sense.
So we do have a relatively significant list existing since we've just built it, since we've existed. I think it was kind of spurred by the GIS component coming online and the ability to map things out so that we could visualize a little bit more of what we're looking at. Yeah, we definitely are working, not quite yet in collaboration with specifically DGS, because a lot of the work that we're seeing out, it directly relates to that department. You know, off the top of my head, something that I know is going on is public waste baskets, for example. So yeah, that's definitely going to be a collaborative effort between several departments, and the idea is just to gain more knowledge and be able to address things that we're hearing from the public, and also things that we know exist from an internal perspective.
Okay. And can we talk a little bit more in depth about the work that you folks are doing on homelessness prevention and rehousing? Because I know that that has been an increase. I've certainly seen a huge uptick in evictions in my district, so I would imagine that that's worse in other areas of the city, and I am so grateful for your housing staff, because it's not just me trying to coordinate with a million different providers in the community. I have been able to lean on them quite a bit with folks, but I was interested more in how we're managing that piece.
So we have kind of two different teams that are addressing the situation. One is ACDA has funding through HUD that they provide to different organizations in the city who help either with eviction prevention or with rapid rehousing. And then we have our housing staff that, our housing services advocate and our fair housing officer who have been helping folks. One of the positions, I think Anne Marie spoke to this earlier, that the community outreach coordinator is being moved to the fire department for 2025, and we've slotted in another housing staff to assist our housing team that we already have in place. Our thought is to have a second housing services advocate who, one, can focus on the unhoused population, and the other can focus on the tenants and the landlords. That, you know, was their original intent of their position, but because the the unhoused population is growing so much, we think we need somebody who can focus solely on that.
And I definitely appreciate that. I have a question for you, and this has to do with the identification of historic districts. I know there have been plans batted around of looking citywide. You said that the warehouse district was identified this year, and you're working on Delaware Ave as well as Pine Hills, if I understand correctly. Do we know if components of West Hill, Arbor Hill, South End have already been identified, or are they still on the list?
We have a historic preservation plan, and those two kind of, give different priority to the different districts. I mean, we do have a lot of, you said Arbor Hill, West Hill, and the South End?
I mean, those were very heavily redlined areas of the city where it's very, very difficult to, you know, even get the lending that you would need. Those properties are sort of underwater in terms of getting loans to do the necessary repairs. And I would imagine that being able to access historic tax credits would assist in redevelopment of a lot of our vacant properties throughout those areas of the city.
So the south end and portions of Arbor Hill, including Tenbrook Triangle and Clinton Avenue and portions of Lark Street, have been designated for quite some time. You know, originally listed in the late 70s, early 80s. So there's a good, what is there, West Hill, not so much. It's an area that we could potentially look to survey in the future, but I think, you know, the tax credits are a reimbursement too, so you have to have the money up front to get the money back. So I think something moving forward that's in our plan is, you know, looking at having some of that money to put forward up front that can allow people to get some of the work done so they get that money back. So the tax credits don't work for every scenario. Where we're seeing them in the warehouse district is a good example, because where they're working the most is the large scale, like residential conversion style projects. So, you know, getting that district listed will probably bear fruit in terms of a lot of those buildings and a lot of those building owners being able to access tax credits. Where we need to do, I think, a little bit more in-depth work is figuring out how to use it more on the residential side and on the more on the homeowner side, because those options are available, but again, in our lower income neighborhoods, it's a little more difficult to access because you have to have that money to spend up front to then get the tax credits to get it back.
I mean, it's something that even folks in my district reach out to me about frequently, is why don't we have this? Because, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, Helderberg has been talked about in Buckingham Lake. I mean, there's so many choices, and even, you know, going back, I mean, Second Avenue and areas like that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, options. We're always willing to work with council members that have a particular interest. You know, and each year we try to apply to the State Historic Preservation Office to at least get funds to do one district, but it is somewhat a lengthy process. You have to survey the district, and then you have to get, you know, the feedback as to whether it's eligible, and then you have to go formally list it. So it's a multi-step process. So again, it's an ongoing part of our preservation plan, and we're definitely looking to survey more in the future.
Okay, thank you. And Rick, my question for you, I'm sorry, I have so many questions. You talked about the intermunicipal coordination for codes, and its focus on policy and practice. Are you guys also looking at, you know, our frequent flyer bad actors and whether other municipalities are having the same pain points with the same entities?
Yeah, so it's not really a specified topic, but we all do talk about, you know, this you know, repeat offender that we deal with here. Turns out they also deal with them, you know, in Schenectady or Troy. So when you just look at different ways of handling, you know, how they're doing things. So it is definitely a topic of conversation. And that was really one of the premises of doing this as well, is, you know, I said, you know, we all have the same problems. They might look a little different, and we may deal with them differently, but we should be more unified than separate as you go from municipality to municipality. Yes, we do look at that.
Okay, thank you. I also just wanted to note how much I appreciate the access portal, because I'm able to not have to bother you so much, because sometimes I can just find that something's in prosecution or somebody was issued a violation when people reach out. And then Anne Marie, I did have some follow-up questions on Lincoln Towers. I think the original assessment was that it was going to be $6 million to demolition, correct? Total, roughly?
I think it was between 6 and 8, but it's really going to probably depend what they see once they start the project.
And we got $3 million. We're pursuing another $3 million. Is it anticipated that the city is going to ultimately become the entity that deals with the demolition, or is the cost going to fall onto the housing authority to complete that project? I'm just interested in knowing who ends up on the hook with whatever we don't
raise?
So I think that the other $3 million grant appropriation is quite likely unless there's a congressional change that significantly adjusts these appropriations. It's already gone through the first phase. We've been meeting with our delegation on that, so that one is kind of already submitted. So hopefully we get that funding. The mayor, I know, has been meeting with the Housing Authority and talking about whether they borrow for the remainder. We apply for additional grants, so we have been looking at some other grant opportunities. I don't think it's yet decided how we would close a funding gap, but they are getting started with the money we have, and we do anticipate the other three filled as well.
Okay, thank you. And those are all the questions that I have this evening. So again, I appreciate everyone's time and patience with me.
Thank you. Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, sure. Next time I'm going to raise my hand faster. But thank you to my colleagues. And also thank you to everyone here taking your time to meet with us. I'm glad to hear the retention in this department has improved. I remember, when I first got started, that was a real struggle in many of our departments here, with codes and with planning, trying to keep good people, year after year. So I'm glad that's improved. Rick, congratulations on your award. I saw that. That's a great honor for you, for your department, and for our city. That's great to see. But that also worries me because when I see that, we have such great staff that are achieving, recognition, I always worry that people are going to try to poach our people. So just like I advocate that we be as aggressive as we can to keep our laborers and keep our union staff and morale, I also want to make sure that I openly advocate that we, do what we have to do to keep our great management team and keep those staff that are keeping these departments afloat, especially during difficult times, and being, setting that standard that other people feel comfortable following. So, thank you, for doing that, and thank you for continuing that, and thank you for staying. And I hope we keep doing what we have to do to keep you around because, I think that's important, especially as we move forward. Sometimes you don't know what you have until you don't have it anymore. And I feel like that happens a lot in big institutions. You have great staff and great management, and then, we lose them. So I think we need to do what we can to not allow that to happen to our city. So again, I appreciate all that progress that we're doing. My questions really have been all basically asked for the most part. I did have one question, Faye, and I want to touch a sore subject. There's nothing to do with the budget. I think you know what it's going to come from. But it does have to do with the budget a little bit because, if it's something that we may not finish this cycle, should we be putting money in for next year to be able to continue it and to be able to get it done? I'll let you answer that. I know you know what I'm talking about.
I'm assuming you're talking about the vacancy study. No, we should be finished. We have about 12 properties who we feel there were some discrepancies in what they've reported in their surveys and what we've heard out in the community. So we have a deadline for them of October 25th to return to us their rent rolls for the month that they sent the survey in so that we can compare the rent rolls to what they answered in the survey. If we don't get them by next Friday, we are going to assume that they're full and there wouldn't be any vacancy in those properties. So after that, we'll be able to compile everything. So I firmly believe we'll be done this year.
Okay. And I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the work that you and your staff have done on that. I know it's been a heavy lift, and I know that was an ask from this body, for you and your department to take that on. So, we appreciate it, and we recognize the work that your department took on and the burden, you know, to get it done. So thank you, and it's good to hear.
A couple questions from my perspective. So just first question. So I know that the community relations coordinator went over to another department. Can you just clarify, because there's two positions I'm seeing overall with a similar title that are leaving. So one in general community services, and then one in buildings and
They were
codes.
both well, actually, no, the communications outreach coordinator was under BRC. That was the person who was doing the emergency relocation program when there's a fire or something, and so he's actually moving to the fire department.
That one's moving to fire, and the other one moved to HR.
Yeah,
Okay.
admin services, correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then for housing, I just want to walk through the grants received. So you mentioned here 1.9 million with Healthy Homes grant. Does that have a multiple year life cycle? Okay.
3.5 years for us to spend that money.
Okay. 3.5 years, so we're recognizing 600K this year, and then the subsequent
Yes.
years will have a
prorated
similar
in.
amount. Okay. All right, thank you. And then similar question for the homeowner rehab grant. First, it said 600,000. Just to make sure, does that tie to DHCR home? Is that the same one?
Yes,
Okay. And is that life cycle then 2 years?
that's 2 years, so we're planning 300,000 for this year.
Thank you. Okay. See Click Fix. If Sarah, maybe you can speak to this. Great to see the percentage of 87% being addressed within 1 week. Is that on a trend of compared to prior years? Is that an improvement from prior years, or is that how's that data looking?
It's pretty consistent to last year, which is the first year we had dedicated staff to manage it. Ebbs and flows a little bit, but it's relatively the same as last year, which I don't think previous years are as comparable, but they were not as good.
Thank you. Okay. Right, I think that's what I have. Councilmember Nani, any questions from you?
I just want to thank everyone for being here and all the work that you do on behalf of the city in your respective positions. My first question, then actually Alfredo brought it up, is regarding the study that we were supposed to have. You know, when we passed the last year's budget, it was supposed to be completed by 2024. And then there was discussion that it would have been done by June. It wasn't. Then it was supposed to be July, August, then September, and now it's in October. Do you need additional staff to complete this request? Because this is something that majority of the council are really passionate about. And personally, I told some council members this was not going to happen and that the mayor was going to drag their feet. And, you know, essentially you guys have proven us right. And I'm really frustrated about that. Like, if you need additional staff to get this done.
No, well, not now, we don't know. We are pretty much done, and like I said, we have just the few pieces of documentation that we need from those particular spots. I mean, we had one person who really put 110% of his time into this project, and it was on top of everything else that he was doing here in the office, so. I think that you'll find that once the report is complete, when you see all his documents and everything that he's done, you'll understand why it took us as long as it did.
I just think that just moving forward, if there's something that, you know, the council is passionate about and asks, you know, your department to do, or any department,
Yeah.
if it needs to be outsourced, really share that information because,
Yeah.
you know, waiting all these months for something that we're really passionate about, it's a disservice, you know, so.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm actually going to be advocating for $125,000 to be added to the budget to really complete this, just to set it aside if, you know, your department's not able to finish.
No, it'll be finished, but
outsource.
that's your prerogative, but it'll be finished by
Gotcha.
the end of the month.
And then just to go into a little bit more, I did see that there's been communication coordinator position that has been eliminated. Can you talk a little bit more of it? I feel like there are some good things that
The communications coordinator has been moved to the HR department.
moved to HR,
Yeah.
and they will still continue to market and promote everything that you guys are doing?
Yeah,
in the other
well,
department?
it'll be a citywide position, but yes, we already are working with them on promoting our office, yeah.
Gotcha. And then I saw at the bottom with the Love Your Block grant program, which is a phenomenal program that has been laid out last year, and that was federally funded, right? So it's just taken out this year. We're not getting the grant no more. Just moving forward.
Right, so the grant is expired, but the funding, we've built into our budget for the next program year.
Gotcha. And then also, this more planning. Just want to thank the budget director for really putting the permit tech position in this year's budget. I do get a lot of calls that sometimes people come in and not able to speak to someone within the plan department because people are busy doing what they're trained for and hired for. So I'm glad to see the permit tech position being created within the city, within the planning department. As it relates to contract services within the planning department, over the past couple of months, we've heard that because of legislation that we passed, we haven't seen a lot of development taking place. This is something that's coming out of a lot of developers, particularly local developers' mouth. Have we thought about maybe promoting the city of Albany to other developers outside of the capital region, anything like that?
I mean, typically that would be work that would be in Capitalize Albany's wheelhouse, I think. I guess we're a little bit more of an impartial actor when it comes to reviewing the projects, but yeah, I mean, whenever a new developer entity reaches out to us, we always try our best to allow them to understand what's going on in the city, what our expectations are, and make them feel at home and want to invest here to the extent that we can do it amicably with the community's vision. So we don't actively reach out, but certainly we always market Albany's a good place to invest, and if they're doing what we want them to do, then we'll get it done for them in a good amount of time. So.
Yeah. Is there a way that maybe the planning department could also do that in concert with Capitalize Albany, or was that something that you would just like to pass to Capitalize Albany? Because again, I love projects. I love planning. I love new buildings. I love going to ribbon cuttings. I'm a politician, and I think that if developers saying that because of legislation that we passed, I feel like there are so many developers out there, and that sometimes I feel like we think locally that we have to work with a local developer, but there are developers all across this great state and outside the state. So I just hope that maybe that's something that maybe we talk about, just setting money aside to kind of help promote the city, particularly for developers who want to do projects. Yeah. And then going to codes, just want to echo the sentiment that was shared by Alfredo. Just congratulations to Rick LaJoy on being code official of the year. That's really impressive. So thank you for everything that you do for the city. I know many of my constituents really appreciate how accessible you are, particularly when it comes to emails or phone calls, or even showing up when there's a need, an emergency. So again, we want to keep talent here. And like Alfredo said, we have individuals who are, and it's more so for the budget director to really look at when we have individuals who are, doing great things for our city, that they should be rewarded. And I think that's the way that we boost morale, particularly when you have someone who has received the CODA Official of the Year. I'm pretty sure other municipalities are also looking to reach out. So if there's any way that, whether it's through the budget or some type of incentive or to just encourage individuals who are doing great things, I think it goes a long way. So I just want to share that. And again, congratulations. And then I did see for the 2025 goals for the Housing Community Development Agency, I saw one of the notes that said that continue to increase the visibility of ACDA program in communities where low amounts of funding are being utilized. Is there a budget line that is going to be utilized to promote this by any chance?
So he wants to know, is there a budget line for helping to promote your programs?
Yeah, I think that they have, so we've been actually going to the different neighborhoods, and they've been tabling events. We do mailings, everything in that sense. When we had AmeriCorps was here, they did a lot of lit drops for us and stuff like that, so we're just targeting areas that we feel are most in need and that we think that they, they could be most beneficial.
Gotcha, thank you. And then, I'm kind of competitive, so to see the rehabilitation program recipients, the 10th ward is like, they're close to last with the 6th ward. Are people applying in the 10th ward, or are they not applying, or are they just being denied? Just want to get a little bit more details about that. With the program recipients?
Yeah, it's income-based, so a lot of times if somebody's over income or they're just, we're not fulfilling the income level, then, unfortunately, they wouldn't be eligible for our programs.
Gotcha.
Can I just speak more on that? In
Yeah.
addition to being income-based, it's also assets-based. So there's a limit to the amount of assets that the home can have. And there's also what HUD calls a after-home rehab value. So, and especially now with the houses all being reappraised, if they come in over $252,000, they're not eligible for HUD assistance. So we're finding that to be more and more challenging, especially in a lot of the different wards in the city.
Gotcha. Thank you. And it's great to see, historical red line neighborhoods being, we see a lot of recipients coming out of those neighborhoods, which is awesome. I'm supportive of looking at policies, particularly through an equity lens, so it's always good to see that. But overall, I just want to say thank you to your department and everything that you guys do for our city. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the vacancy study, just to be clear. So, Commissioner Andrews, you said that the last response date is going to be October 25th for those 12 approximate properties that need documentation. So, can you just confirm that the council will be receiving that before the end of this calendar year?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, just to say in a different way, for the next budget that we're talking about, fiscal year 2025, the vacancy study would have already been completed, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to clarify that point. And then another question I missed was actually for Director LaJoy here. You had mentioned other municipality program it's going to expand to the state. Could you just elaborate that in a little bit? And are you leading that effort?
Yes, I am. So, as a building official, we belong to a local capital district, New York State Building Official Conference, and then there's a state level with all the chapters that fall under it. So, on the state level, I'm the committee chair for this. When they, I told them about it, and then they asked me if we would be interested in taking it statewide because there was so much interest from our other chapters throughout the state. So, yes, ma'am, and I am leading that.
It's incredible work. Thank you. I'm sure it's above and beyond what you do daily, so thank you for doing that.
So, thank you.
And then another question for Commissioner Andrews. The neighborhood specialist, how are they doing? Are you still fully staffed? Are they still in their respective locations across the city? How's that?
Yeah, yep, we're still fully staffed. Everybody's still in the same neighborhoods. It's all going well as far as I can see, right? Yeah, no, they're all doing great.
I personally love that program. I think it's such a tremendous help to all of our city residents, but it's a great addition that you have done.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. With that, any additional questions? Councilmember Ballerin?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I guess two questions. Follow up to Faye again on the vacancy study. Will we have the results before the budget is passed? So if we wanted to make any adjustments on this issue, we would have the ability to do so?
Well, I'm not sure what your time frame for passing the budget is. What you have until December 1st, is that correct? So.
Well, we normally, I would say November November, December, we try to get the budget passed before December. So, is this something you think we'd be able to get, by the first week of November, so we could have an idea before we pass the budget if there's some adjustments we'd want to make?
I would say we probably can do it by then.
That's great, thank you. I appreciate that. And I guess my second question is, based on some information that was just shared, is that a HUD requirement, the $250,000 assessed value?
It's what they HUD defines as an after rehab value. So what we have to do is they set the after rehab value for a single family home in the city of Albany at $252,800. So if the property comes in and it's already worth more than that, we're not able to assist it. If it comes in under the $252,000, we have to make a rough estimate of the amount of work and funding that we're putting into the home, add that to the current assessed value, and make sure that that doesn't exceed the $252,000.
So I guess my other question is, because you're bringing in even a more controversial topic, the assessment that we just did. Is that 252 based on the new assessment rule, or is that based on the 2024 assessment rule, or the 2023?
$252,000. It's set by HUD, so it's actually a formula calculation. So it's based on the area median housing values in the city of Albany. So it's a limit that's set by the federal government. So it doesn't actually have anything to do with the new assessment rules. It's just the timing of how everything changed. Those values increase every year in June. So hopefully HUD will look at what has happened with the values in the city of Albany, and next June, hopefully that number will significantly increase.
Okay, yeah, because that concerns me a lot, because I know there's a lot of residents in my neighborhood, which I want to thank you for helping. And I know personally I worked with one that was working with you that really appreciated and needed those funds to be able to make the repairs that they needed. But this assessment brought a lot of people over the 252,000 mark. I mean, people who bought houses 8 years ago for 110,000 are now assessed at 290,000. Those people can afford a $290,000 home. So, I'm just a little concerned that we're not going to make it even harder for people who don't have a lot to be able to keep the little they have. So, thank you for sharing that. And if there's something that we can do as a body to help advocate to increase that number, if you're finding that you have a lot of residents are applying, but they no longer meet the eligibility, please let us know how we can help and how we can advocate for you, because just because your house is deeker and for lack of a better word, it says that it's worth something. It doesn't mean that it's really, one, worth that, and two, it doesn't really mean that you can afford that. Just because you own it doesn't mean that that's something you can honestly afford in today's value. So I want to make sure we're not pushing our residents out, especially our residents that don't have a lot of means, but were lucky enough to have bought a house when the market was more favorable in our city. So thank you for sharing that, and let us know any way we can do to help your department in those efforts, because your department helps a lot of our residents, and it helps a lot of our neighbors, keep a lot of our neighbors in our neighborhoods. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Farrell.
I just wanted to follow up on the vacancy study, and just as a reminder for my colleagues that the reason why we ended up doing the housing study internally is because we did have this in our budget for many years. We put it out to bid 3 different times and we got 0 bids on it. So just to keep that in mind, that we've tried like crazy to get people to do an outside firm to do it, and nobody wanted to. And we raised the number, we did all sorts of different things, and it just was not able to happen. So it's certainly something that we can discuss, but the reason why we did it internally is because we couldn't actually find someone to do it. So I really appreciate the Department of Neighborhood Services taking it on, because I think it's something that's super important. And I look forward to the results, because I think it's, as the person who was the main internal champion and made sure that we kept putting those bids out year after year, I can tell you we got nothing from it. Nobody was interested in bidding on it. So it's great that it's actually happening.
Councilmember Nane.
Just so I understand this, if they're unable to provide the vacancy study, how do we go about hiring an outside source to do it? Like, we have to wait till the next budget cycle to discuss, or can we, after the budget passes, can we actually make some, can we allocate funds after the budget passed to really do an outside source to get a vacancy study, maybe $125,000 RFP to put out to do a vacancy study? I just want to get some information about that.
So a couple of points there. The first point, you said if they are unable to, but I think what we're hearing tonight from the commissioners that we are going to get the results soon. So I don't know if there's a question of if they are unable to, but I think we might have, you know, we look forward to the results that will come out. So the other question is, you know, how do we go about that? If we were to allocate, I think what you're saying, which I don't know that I necessarily agree with, if we're allocating new funds in this budget, it would need to go out to RFP process. So that would take place after January 1st, 2025, when this budget would go into effect. And I don't know the typical RFP processing time, but I would assume 30 days minimum to get it out and get it issued in public, and then you have to give adequate time for people to respond back. And so we'd probably look at a couple-month period in order to outside hire, if anyone applies, to Councilmember Farrell's point.
So with the funds not being in this year's budget, like, how do we go about it to be able to accomplish it if we wanted to go outsource the vacancy study?
I guess I don't. So, I mean, one of the big issues is we weren't, I don't know what we would do that would be different, because I believe the last one that we went out with was $100,000. I don't know that we would be able to, I don't know what we would do differently that would get people to suddenly want to do it. That's one of the bigger issues, is that I just don't think there's a lot of people that do this work. So one of our big issues, and I personally would hate to put this in the budget, make a big thing of it, and then we, once again, you know, we have a vacancy study that we did in-house that we had a lot of work put into. But even separately from that, to go through that whole process and once again get no one to apply for it, and then where are we? We have a vacancy study that we don't even have the results for it, and we're already putting like a negative spin on it instead of actually seeing what the vacancy study is, looking at the methodology, and then making a decision. And then part of that decision should honestly be, we haven't been able to get any response for years. I mean, remember, this was years. Like, this was something that we started 6-7 years ago. I mean, it was years to do that. So that's a big piece of it, because I would hate to go through that process and get nobody to respond, and then where are we? Especially if we haven't even fully given this current vacancy study the opportunities to succeed. So it's my request that we actually see this vacancy study before we say it's terrible, we shouldn't do this, and then we're stuck in a spot that maybe we have a good vacancy study, but we've already cast it in a negative light, and then we can't actually get anybody to do a different vacancy study. So I think not having people apply for many, many years, despite trying many, many times, is a really big thing that we need to consider as we're having this conversation.
Oh, Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Chair. I first want to just say, I hope this conversation, I mean, one, it's a good conversation to have. Two, I want you to know, Commissioner Anderson and your staff, that we all appreciate the enormous work that you and your staff have done to try to get this to the finish line. And I think we may have underestimated the amount of work that was needed. And I think that's why there is a openness to see what can we do to make it so that whenever these, so this was something that we all knew was going to be controversial. We all knew no matter what we did, this would be controversial and was going to get whatever side numbers didn't go on, you know, it's going to be a difficult situation. I think what some of us are sharing is that there is some sentiment out there that we should have done this a little differently and a little bit better. And that we as a council should have also prepared a better opportunity, which I think we did 75,000, which is why I think Councilman Nani is saying 125 to make sure we put the resources so that you have all of the entities that are needed to make this a less painful process. And I'm sure this was a painful process, more painful than I think any of us wanted it to be for you. I'm gonna say this, you stated that we'll get the results before, the budget process is over, hopefully the first week of November, so we have some time to digest all that information and then make a decision on how to move forward and have that difficult conversation with you in the room, as we move forward. But again, I just want to make sure you understand and your staff understand, because I'm sure your staff may be watching this at home. We appreciate the work that was done. We know a lot of work was done on this. We know a lot of phone calls, a lot of mailers, a lot of data analyzing, a lot of follow-up, a lot of people hanging up the phone on you and probably not being very kind to you and your people. We get that. I get that. So I don't want anyone to feel that that's not valued, because it is. It is. And I look forward to seeing this, and I look forward to, having a conversation after we see it, and still being in the budget process, being able to flesh out whatever is needed to be fleshed out and digest, and I'm sure we're going to get beat up by all sides, which I'm sure you've already probably experienced in this process. So I look forward to those difficult conversations. At the same time, I really don't look forward to it, but I do know that we need sometimes these difficult conversations to move things forward. So again, thank you.
Yeah, we definitely underestimated the amount of time it would take. What we really didn't think was going to take as long as it has taken is the validation process. The surveys were responded to, fairly quickly. All the phone calls were done, but then we had to, Sam's been in the basement of this building 3, 4, or 5 times trying to find building permits on properties that said that they had you know, a lot of rehabilitation done to the building and they should be exempt. He's been confirming things with the state in terms of the subsidies and everything like that. So I think that's what's taking a lot longer than we expected it to do, but we're at the finish line now, so it shouldn't be much longer.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilmember Nani?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you. And again, it's not to shine negative light. We're going through the budget process now, and I'm just trying to figure out best way to help you accomplish this again. So, again, you know I appreciate everything that you do for the city and all your staff, et cetera. So, just budget season and trying to figure out ways I can help staff and department heads, et cetera.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think what would be fitting probably to end that conversation is just ask you directly, Commissioner, do you think that at this point in time you have the resources and your needs to complete the vacancy study and give us a good and accurate result?
Yep, I do.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. With that, do we have any additional comments or questions this evening? Okay. To wrap up, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I know we went a little long, but you are the largest presentation for departments that we have. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you do for our city, and we look forward to a good next year. Thank you. But we are not done yet, per Councilmember Farrell, which I forgot. We do have one resolution to discuss, Finance Committee. If we can do that quickly, that would be great. Okay. I'm sure this will be not too shit, not too bad. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so we're here with our Budget Deputy Director, Ms. Fitzpatrick, and our Commissioner for Administrative Services, Ms. Anne Marie Salmon. We're discussing Resolution 102-101-24R, which is a resolution of the Common Council approving a transfer of budgeted funds and a change in the authorized positions included in the 2024 city budget, which will affect a salary rate or salary total. With that, I'll open it up for an explanation of this resolution.
Okay, so I think our budget director may have mentioned this, but the program technician, we are requesting to create 5 program technicians. Really, we want to get started on that hiring process. I think one of their job duties will be processing of the traffic violations associated with some of the school speeding cameras. They will probably also do other administrative work within police as assigned. I don't think we'll necessarily get 5 between now and December 31st, but we want that program to be fully staffed, and we know it can take a little bit of time. So we're asking for the mid-year add on these positions. And they're also reflected in our budget request for 2025. And then the other 2 positions, we are requesting to delete the clerk stenographer 2 in our fire department and add administrative assistant within the fire department. We had a long-term employee retire who had kind of that more archaic clerk stenographer title. So we are hoping to hire an administrative assistant, which is functionally the job that was being done, but modernize the title.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from? Okay. Looks like we have no questions on this. It looks like we might have a motion. Councilmember Farrell.
I move that Resolution 107-101-24R goes through the committee with a positive recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Farrell to approve with a positive recommendation. We have a second from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor? Aye. All right, Resolution 107-101-24R moves out of Finance Committee with a positive recommendation and will be voted on Monday, October 21st. All right, with that, we are now truly at the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn, Councilmember Adams, second. Councilmember Keegan, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.